for our faculty panel titled Leaks, and that means Leadership in Education and AI for a Digital Society. This panel will showcase the College of Education, Sport and Human Sciences leadership in the use of AI, artificial intelligence, to advance education in a digital society. We will feature 5 of our college faculty who work on the cutting edge of AI research, including 3 winners of Microsoft AI for Good Research Awards on using AI for robust solutions to societal grand challenges. Faculty panelists today will include Drs. Brian French, Pong E., Tintin Lee, Jonah Firestone, and Don McMahon. Our panelists today will each present their work for 8 minutes in the following order. Dr. Jonah Firestone will be the first presenter, then Dr. McMahon will be the second. The third presenter will be Dr. Pong E. The fourth presenter will be Dr. Tintin Lee. And last but not the least, Dr. Brian French will give the final presentation. Again, each panelist will present for 8 minutes. We are managing the time and we send a note to each presenter when the time is about up. We will ask attendees to kindly keep their questions till all panelists have completed their presentations. This will allow the presentations to flow very smoothly. And then we intend to have some time for robust discussions at the end through the Q&A session. Once again, thank you so much for joining us here today. The College of Education is showing a lot of leadership, not just only at the institutional level, but also regionally as well as nationally in the use of AI for advancing education. So this is a fantastic opportunity for our college to showcase the excellent work that our faculty members are doing. We certainly appreciate the 5 panelists, our presenters today. Thank you so very much for generously giving us of your time and being here today. Thank you so very much to those of you who are here as well to join these presentations to learn the advancements and the use of AI in our college. In the interest of time, I will now turn this over to Dr. Jonah Firestone to kick off the panel presentations. Jonah, over to you, please.
Okay. Can all you see my, well, the wrong screen, of course, but that's all right. We will make it. Which screen can you see? The big one or the little one? Anyone want to tell me that?
You're in presentation mode.
Perfect. That's what I wanted to know. I'll just work with this. Okay, so I'm cheating a little bit today. I'm going to not talk directly about the research that Don and I have been doing. I'm going to throw that to Don. I just wanted to talk a little bit about AI in general and some of the issues that we're having in AI, and that has been leading to the discussions and within classes, within faculty meetings, and at this point internationally. So forgive me for the semi-pun that I'm using as the title for this, but what I really want to do is start off with the elephant in the room. And the elephant in the room in this case is the printing press. So this device has caused great trouble and issues across the world, and it is an invention that I think might end up destroying a modern Western culture. We can see historically, printing press coming from the 1450s, we had an initial welcome. It was great, but since then there's been growing apprehension as more works have flooded the market from the Protestants. Critics have expressed concern that mass market produced books are of low quality and have promoted heretical ideas. So far, we are talking about increasing censorship, and eventually we might end up with violent opposition to this horrible device. The reactions from innovators in the public, however, have been different. There's been a boost and help for the Renaissance. It's empowered new voices to actually come up and speak what they feel. It's created the rise of the Reformation, and it's done accelerations of science, and it's been created the birth of mass media. So it's also created a growing literacy amongst the populace, but it has created a fear of misinformation. There's been economic disruptions and opportunities across the entire planet. It's created a standardization of the language, which we didn't have before, and it seems to be having a lasting impact on freedom and control. So the reason I'm talking about the printing press and not AI is because a lot of these seem similar to what we're seeing today. So every time we have a new invention, it tends the printing press, radio, television, if you're Socrates, literacy, we tend to have this reaction to it that will destroy the very fabric of the culture that we're talking about. Even as of in the last couple of weeks, I've heard more people saying, no, AI is different. But if we look at what happened with the printing press, we can say that the reactions really aren't that different. They're very similar to what we've seen before, and they're very similar to all these inventions that both impact society and impact education. So when we're talking about education and AI adoption, I usually point to McGee in 2024, who did a meta-analysis on what's going on. And so the similarities between AI adoption and other general ed tech adoptions are based upon the perceived and ease of use, behavioral intentions, and moderating factors. And we see that a lot of these are very similar in past ed tech adoptions. Self-efficacy, how we feel we can use it, et cetera, et cetera. There are differences, however. Technology, complexity, and anxiety. There's a higher level of anxiety when we talk about AI. It's much more of a sea change than past things like overhead projectors, calculators, and internet. There are concerns about ethics and transparency. Obviously, the number one thing that we talk about is cheating when we're talking about classes, but we also talk about ownership of property and property rights and plagiarism when we're talking about the use of AI. Cost and time, there's a lot of people who are very familiar with AI on the surface level, but they don't do it well because they don't feel that they have the time or the money to invest to make AI work for their classes more. And then there's going to be, and this is paramount to our discussions, I think, in the College of Education, a required shift in pedagogy. And the idea that when we went from overhead projectors with the pen to cameras on the tabletop, when we switched to technologies when the internet came, there wasn't this massive shift in the need of differences in pedagogy. Sorry about the way I worded that. And then we're going to have to be looking at not just how teachers deal with cheating, but how teachers teach them in their classes. Because we need to make AI both useful for us, and we need to make AI, some classes be AI proof. And Don was going to talk about more about that later. So the implications are we need comprehensive training and support for our AI teachers starting in pre-service. Teachers starting in pre-service. We need to talk about ethical use and transparency, considerations of cost and time investments. It costs money to run this. It costs a lot of power. It also costs a lot of time that teachers don't have. And then we need to support these pedagogical shifts. We need to support them now, and we need to not just put a Band-Aid on it, and we can't take it away. The AI genie is definitely out of the bottle. And so all of this comes to lead to what we made, what Don and I and Pong and Ting made as part of the policy statements for the WSU Department of Teaching and Learning. That we want to recognize the transformative potential of AI education, and AI should enhance but not replace human learning, creativity, and decision making. An example or metaphor I typically use for this is when I was in architecture school a long time ago, we weren't allowed to touch the computer, the CAD. We weren't allowed to touch computer-aided design until after 2 years of doing everything by hand. So we had to learn to do all the drafting, all the design by hand before we were allowed to touch the computers. And the reason being is we were not able to assess how good the computer would be before we already learned to do it by ourselves. So we don't want AI to replace human learning. We don't want it to replace human knowledge. We want it to supplement and complement, just like any educational technology. So the core principle that, and Don always make sure I talk about this, is that students are welcome to use AI to learn. However, they are responsible for their own learning. AI might provide incorrect information. Students must critically evaluate its outputs. To do that, you have to already know what those outputs should look like. And then students should be cautious about using AI to complete graded work. This is of paramount importance today. So I attended the NSDA conference in the spring, and it's the largest conference of science educators in the world. And during that conference, basically, I saw every third presentation being broadcast was about using AI for things such as grading and AI for curriculum writing. And there's a place for that, but we have to be very wary in those uses. And so by using the metaphors I had before about things like the printing press and other changes, and talking about how we have to learn how to do things before we can hand it over to AI, we can guide future teachers in how to use AI responsibly. And to do that, we came up with 4 guidelines: human-centered approach, transparency and accountability, ethical and equitable use, and academic integrity. And none of these are fundamentally different than what we already talk about when we're talking to our students. But we just need to apply what we're very good at when we're training and preparing new teachers to this new technology. And that goes for AI in the classroom, but it also goes for how we're going to be doing our research moving forward. And I think that's exactly 8 minutes. Don?
All right, thanks, Jonah. All right, let me share my screen here. All right. Okay, hopefully you can see that, right? And I'm not in presenter view. Cool. All right, so this kind of builds off a couple of pieces and a couple of different projects that I've been involved with here. Just kind of a quick overview. A while back, I think in 2019, I wrote this piece called Leveraging Emerging Technology to Design an Inclusive Future with Universal Design for Learning. And AI was one of the components of that piece. And this theme of trying to design an inclusive future is kind of what I try to frame a lot of my work around. In that piece, we had like 5 kind of propositions to kind of help guide that process for special educators. One of those is swish and click, that we need to build in more opportunities for practice. You may have definitely come across cases in your own teacher experiences where all of a sudden you are just expected to insert new technology in the classroom. We need to find more opportunities to kind of build embedded practice into things, and that's very true with AI. The other one here, with this great Muppet picture of Jonah and me, is one of the other propositions from that article. Are you ready for the remix? And this idea of taking our existing educational practices and strategies, whether they're evidence-based practices, universal design for learning, and matching them to matching AI to help enhance those instructional practices is kind of the easiest way, I think, to get started with a lot of these tools in the classroom. So that led to Jonah and I working on this piece called Creatively Remixing Special Education Practices with Artificial Intelligence. And in this piece, we match up specific UDL guidelines to tools. We match up evidence-based practices to specific artificial intelligence tools and high leverage practices in special education. I think this approach is really important because asking someone to get started with AI can seem overwhelming. They're definitely, we have tech-phobic pre-service teachers or pre-service teachers who don't really want to have much technology in their classroom, and helping them understand how to make it practical in their daily life in the classroom is an important way of getting started with that. So we take a very practitioner-friendly approach and just kind of drill down really specifically with direct strategies there. Over there on the right is an example of customizing ChatGPT to create social stories. And so I created this one where it is a social narrative maker. And if you're not familiar with the evidence-based practice of social narratives, you create a little story like, I would like Laura to be safe on the playground. She needs to not throw rocks at her friends, and it will create a little story that will help your student to understand those concerns. And I hate writing social narratives. It's just not much fun. It's not great creative writing. AI is really good at it with a little bit of training, and a great example of how you can use AI to support an evidence-based practice. Further on in the article, Jonah and I match up each one of those UDL guidelines with a specific example in the text how a teacher could get started doing it. We try to provide a wide range of, hey, here's a LLM that's good at a lot of things like ChatGPT, or something more specific like Goblin Tools that's really good at making a structured task analysis for a special education teacher. But I kind of like this idea down here where when we align AI with UDL, we teach technology use with a purpose, not just, hey, look, here's a bunch of tools and I'm just shoving a bunch of tools at you. Kind of by matching it with the Universal Design for Learning framework, I think that's a kind of responsible and kind of that very action-oriented way of delivering those supports. In my work with Holly and Josh on their rural CRP project, AI was one of the ways that we helped the providers there provide task analysis for how to have those kind of write in the job supports. And if you've ever done a kind of classic task analysis as part of like a computer science activity where you try to write down all the steps of making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, it turns out that people are pretty bad at writing down all the steps of how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. AI tends to be pretty good at making all of those discrete steps. So one of the great things you can do with this is, you can provide it the instructional manual on how to do maintenance for a particular piece of equipment, and it will give you a task analysis on how to do that, and you can have it adjust for the reading level of your particular client. So that's been a fun use of AI in another project here at WSU. I've got 2 minutes left. And this is one of my favorites right now. In the Master's in Teaching MIT class for instructional technology, this summer I piloted, and then Jonah did it as well in his class on the Tri-Cities campus, a kind of yin and yang AI assignment where students have to make a multi-day lesson plan for a particular topic or unit, and they have to either pick whether they will make it an AI-supported lesson or try to make a series of lessons that are AI resistant. I've stopped saying AI proof at this point, but at least AI resistant. I'll be honest, when we first did this, I kind of thought it would go probably 70, 75% AI supported, and then a few going with AI resistant. It pretty much split right down the middle from our teacher candidates in both classes, which I thought was interesting. And so one of the things we want to do is kind of take this little pilot work and kind of do some further analysis on what kind of look for some trends in that work. But I think it's important to have an opportunity for a AI resistant focus. We have a lot of students who have major ethical concerns about AI, whether it's copyright use, or if you've ever gone to the website, What Uses More, it's terrifying how much electricity you've used to create 3 seconds of AI video. And they have legitimate ethical concerns about that. And so trying to build in an option for them was important to us. Future directions, I'm also interested in kind of looking at how AI can function as an assistive technology. One of my biggest concerns here is in special education, we have an issue of learned helplessness sometimes when you have a paraprofessional who's providing too much support, almost like a educational nanny. There's a lot of potential for AI to become a very intrusive tutor in our educational experience. You need to be on task. You need to be on task. You don't seem to be on task. And I think as we're looking at how AI can be a positive, I think it's also important to remember go ahead and draw a line in the future where you think that might be too intrusive. And so that is one of the things that I kind of am curious about with looking at AI as an assistive technology. And so last 10 seconds here. We're trying to find ways to embed this in our teacher preparation program in a variety of ways and trying to build in some AI literacy skills and ethics at the same time. And our goal should be a human-centered, inclusive, and creative educators for the AI era. Thanks. And I'm just a little over.
Okay, let me share my screen. Can you see my screen now? Great, great. Thank you so much for this opportunity to share my work. Pretty much today I will share what we are doing about with Microsoft AI for Good. So Microsoft AI for Good support us with this project, which is advancing equitable science learning in Washington State classroom through an AI-empowered group augmentation coordinator. So our team include Dr. Tintin Li and also Dr. Andy Cavendel from Science Education Group together. So I want to talk about the bigger background about this work. Science education now have the new vision, which is the next generation science standards. So you can see this is a policy document starting from 1999 to the 1912. Actually, science education vision is transferred from emphasize content to integrate three-dimension knowledge, include disciplinary core idea, so which is similar to the content, and also emphasize science engineering practice and also cross-cutting concept. So the main idea is how students can integrate the three pieces together to make sense of real phenomena and also solve the complex problems. So it is complicated. Even now, NGSI already released and implement for like 12 years, but teachers still are struggling about three-dimensional teaching and support student three-dimensional learning. And also for the NGSS, so starting from elementary level to middle school level and high school level, it's emphasized several core ideas multiple times. So we call this is the learning progression. Students need to learn the same idea, core ideas, starting from the elementary level, middle school, and high school. Let's put out another challenge is the two main drive questions. One, how do we support all students move toward the high level three-dimensional understanding of science? This is the first one. The second one is how do we leverage AI to support all students move toward the high level three-dimensional understanding? So this is the two main driving questions for these studies. And so this is a three-dimensional learning progression in my ASI project. So I, based upon the NGSS standards and unpack the NGSS standards 3 dimensions, and then map up, give a map like the route map to show student learning pathways so that they can climb up to the upper levels. But it is so challenging based upon my implementation. So this is my fourth years on my ASI project. So we found all of these. You can see, for example, one of the box, right? So we have the student develop and use a model. The second one is to construct a scientific explanation. Instead of multiple choice A, B, C, D, teacher need to draw a model. Teacher need to write a short paragraph to express their understanding. But in the classroom, teacher use assessment as learning activity in the classroom. We call this is a formative assessment. But teacher don't have the time to analyze student responses, to give student timely feedback. and think about the next step, whether I need to adjust my instruction strategy so that I can put forward. And in the classroom, I observed a lot of teachers, what they want to do, they just have a whole classroom discussions. But teacher never got a chance to check whether my student achieve this learning goal or not. And they just pause here. Then keep going, keep going. And through my data, I found that student almost always left behind in one of the learning goals. And then it's cumulative. It's so hard, it's so challenge for student they can move up to the upper levels. So that's I'm thinking about this is in the classroom, teacher either use whole class discussions or teacher that they can group a small group like 3 people or 5 students in one group. And let's raise another questions. Teacher cannot go to every group to check whether the group have the productive conversations based upon their session. So let's put a lot of challenge so that teacher can support student learning. And this is one of the assessment tasks. You can see, it's not like a traditional assessment activities. And teacher need, for this one, student need to read all of the background and make sense of the data table and use the data table to answer all of the questions. Like, first one, what is your claim? Second one is what are the evidence that support your claim. The third one will be, you should demonstrate your understanding with reasoning process, how all of this evidence you select can support your claim and why or not. You can think about in the classroom, students have different kind of opinions, even different kind of claim, different kind of pieces of evidence, and also the reasoning process are totally different. That's why. So when I found this challenge, I talked to team, I talked to Andy. So what's the solutions? What's the best solutions that can support um, classroom discussions and group discussions? Then I rely on Andy's expertise about argumentation to learn as a framework. Think about, okay, why not we can have an AI chatbot that can facilitate the small group discussions, that can present the useful information from student responses, that have the small group have the more productive conversations in their group, so that all of the group members they can achieve the learning goal, so that they can move to the upper levels. So that's the ideas we talk about this. How about we use argumentation to learn as a framework, and then we are developing AI chatbot that can facilitate group discussions. So this is a challenge. So yeah, like I said before, teacher use assessment as learning activities, and student they complete the task, and then teacher will review all the student responses in the teacher portal. And now teacher is preparing to further support student development, preparing individual grading, personalized feedback, organizing small group discussion. And the third one is identify appropriate instruction strategy activities. And in my own ASF project, so I already tried how to use large language model to analyze student responses and provide feedback. This is the first one. And in another project, AI project, I involved 3 years ago. So that one is how to, we expert design instruction strategies along with all of these assessment activities, and AI can recommend appropriate instruction strategies for teachers to use whenever they see the auto report. And now what I'm doing with the Microsoft AI for Good is facilitate small group discussions. This is the missing pieces for support teachers and students for the whole pictures, what I'm doing right now. So for the Microsoft, this project, like I said, we use argumentation to learn as a framework. So AI can be a partner to teacher that support teacher, that help teacher to facilitate the small group discussions. So our technique is use multiple agent AI system, and think about one agent can be the author to synthesize all of the groups, and also have individual agent for each group, and can summarize the key insight from student responses and provide real-time argumentation prompts for each groups. And so the more important is that, so instead of give answers, the AI group argumentation coordinator is keep asking prompting questions to this group. The goal is have all students in the group achieve one learning goal so that they can move up to the next levels. So Microsoft, this project is 2-year project. So right now we are developing the AI system right now. This is the first year. The second year, once the AI system is ready, so we will conduct a small scale classroom to pilot whether this is helpful or not. And in the design process, we also include several co-design teachers so that we are not like in a final stage. So teachers say, okay, this is not what we want, right? So we want to from the very beginning. So we loop in teacher in the design process. And even in the implement process, we also want to get teacher feedback, whether we can better support teacher in this case. So we're hoping, we can have more update by spring, that we can have a draft AI system we can share with everybody to our college and also our student. That's all my presentation. Yeah. Look forward to hear any feedback. Thank you so much.
All right, I'm gonna take it over. Thank you so much for Dan and Jonah for setting up the good foundation about AI, and also Paul, thanks so much for setting up the Science Education Foundation. I don't need to talk anything about that. So I will start talking about the work that I'm doing about AI. Pretty much build upon my dissertation work and my previous research assistantship work. So the work that I'm doing is about the transformative collaboration of human intelligence and artificial intelligence in designing next generation science assessment for productive learning. So in Peng's presentation, you may hear that he talked several times about teacher use formative assessment to support student learning. And then, so this is one thing that is crucial, very important in science education. So those assessment, we actually call it assessment for learning or even assessment as learning. So those assessments are not for us to understand how many kind of score points that our student get. It's about for teachers to understand where my students are and how I can support my student to move forward. So this assessment can be used exactly as classroom learning and teaching activities. And for the work that I have been doing is, so I was part of the team about next generation science assessment project. And in that project, we design a lot of kind of the next generation science standard aligned assessment tasks. However, so when those tasks, whenever we talk to the teachers, those assessments are great, but they are all pre-designed assessments. So whenever we talk to teachers, they usually say, oh, I like this assessment. They are great. They are very helpful. However, I need to kind of, adapt it a little bit or adjust, revise it, modify it a little bit to make sure my students there are, and they have the prior knowledge or experience that can make sure they can access to the assessment. So, but this is the problem that the teachers are facing every day, right? For instance, if we are developing assessment that talks about snow as a phenomenon or snowing as a phenomenon, but the student in California may have very limited experience about snowing. And then how, as an educator, as a researcher, we can support the teachers to adapt those existing assessment to make sure it's more kind of accessible to their student. That's the work that I hope AI can help us to achieve. So starting here are some kind of challenges about designing this type of accessible assessment. So as I mentioned before, all those pre-designed assessment pretty much often fail to accommodate the student diverse linguistic, culture, and cognitive needs. Because they are pre-designed, even we are using kind of like Don talk about the UDL or some other kind of equity tools, but you can still not kind of achieve the goal to provide timely or exactly customized assessment for the student in different contexts. However, designing this type of assessment, I will show you a diagram later. So we call it evidence-centered design. It's very time-consuming and also require diverse expertise. For instance, if you design science assessment, you have to have the science content expert. You also need to have to assessment expert, and to make sure the language, the language is accessible to all the students. You want to have some linguistic or language expert involved in the process. And then to make sure the scenario is engaging or compelling for all the students, you may need to have some motivation or psychology expert involved in the process. So this is a very kind of multidisciplinary collaborative work, so which really made it very time consuming and labor intensive. But when it comes to the real classroom, more importantly is teacher usually need real-time support to either design or adapt existing activity and to be more productively in using those customized assessment to support their their science learning. So these are the challenges. And then based upon the challenges, the work that I have been and also the with Paul and also other kind of collaborators together. So we grounded in hybrid intelligence system and the collective sense making theory. We are trying to develop a conversational AI-empowered multi-agent assessment design system through design-based research. And this is also the work funded by the Microsoft AI for Good Lab. And then so for this system, we want to kind of support elementary teachers, but not only elementary teachers at this time, it's about the K-16 teachers to, in collaboration with multidisciplinary expert to design customized, standard-aligned assessment using evidence-centered design. That's the first goal. And the second goal is to design assessment co-design model. So that integrate insights from multidisciplinary experts and teachers, ensuring those assessments are customized for a specific classroom through human AI collaboration. So you may hear a lot kind of many times about co-design, but how this co-design, the mechanism really work, how does it look like? So these are still under exploration. So we hope we can develop a co-design model throughout the process. And the third goal is to really explore how teachers from diverse educational contexts, especially from rural, from urban, from suburban, from different contexts, how they engaged with this system and evaluate its usability in assessment practices, and how they perceive those kind of the AI tool used in their classroom as a kind of the facilitator or as a tool or as a peer, as an expert. Those are the three major goals. And then this is the evidence-centered design process that I try to kind of give you a little bit kind of picture about why this is complicated and why we need AI support. So if you think about to break down the design process into each step, that's actually exactly what we are doing. So we have each step, we break down the entire design process from the learning goal to the final product, the assessment, the tasks. So into like 6 or even more than 6 steps, including those interim products. And then we hope AI can really support us to make sure we can collect the data or evidence for each step to help us to understand where our students are and why this is reliable for helping you to understand your students, their learning performances. So for the current progress, we are developing the AI, the assessment or learning activity design system. This is funded by Microsoft. And also we are exploring how multidisciplinary experts collaborate together to achieve the goal of productive human AI collaboration, especially teachers and other stakeholders in the education system. This is funded by the National Academy of Education. So this is a kind of, we are still in the iterative design process. This is a really kind of iterative design process. You have to kind of keep revising it. But we do have some kind of existing preliminary kind of the version for our AI system. We call it Adapt AI. Pretty much mean we are partnering with the teachers and the AI together to achieve the goal. And this is the kind of the interface of our AI system. So this is more, these slides show you kind of more specifically about how to zoom in the system, how this system achieve or align with the evidence-centered design of process I presented for you kind of in the prior slides. And then so how the teacher can really kind of input their local context to ask AI to work with them together to adapt their existing learning activities or design new learning activities. So good news is we are also very excited to share that last week we heard from our collaborator from American Institute for Research. So we just awarded their internal grant, which is 1 million. So AIR is going to invest to conduct a randomized control trial design that to test and validate our Adapt AI platform in the next 2 years. So which is very exciting. And then so we are so very excited about the progress. Yeah, so to conclude, we also would love to thank our collaborators and our partnering teachers and the school district leaders for their invaluable contribution. So I'm happy to take any questions that you may have, but I will pass it to Brian.
Thanks, Ting.
Sure.
Thanks to the 4 presenters so far too. It's fascinating work. Really cool to see. I don't have any slides to share, actually. I'm just going to talk about what I'm working on, if that's okay, and then open up for questions. So I'll start by saying it's really nice to be here and have this conversation about where AI is going. I'm going to share some work that we're doing on 2 different projects that really looks at the interface of artificial intelligence, measurement science, and student engagement. And I'll just set the context for you about what we're working on. And some of my students are here helping on the project, so I have to thank a team of people that's been on these projects. One area I've focused on for about 2.5 decades has centered on understanding student engagement across the educational context, going from K through 12 to higher education at the university level. And I've been dabbling in this area, looking at how engagement's related to academic success, persistence, and overall student well-being. The question that's really been driving some of this work that I focused on is how do we better support students in staying connected in their learning environments, especially the ones that are at risk for disengagement in their environments, like in the K through 12 setting, or dropping out of school altogether, be it K through 12 or higher ed. And just to give you some ideas about this in terms of numbers, so you kind of get a picture of the scope of the problem. If you take Washington State, for instance, in the K through 12 environment, we have, well, I'll say at the national level, we have about 20% of kids miss at least 10 days of school a year. In Washington, that percentage jumps to 31% in the last year. To put that in kind of perspective, if you were to take Pullman, the size of Pullman, the population of Pullman, times that by 10, so we get about 320, 330,000 people. That's how many students in our state are missing school at a rate of 10% of their learning days per year or more. That's pretty drastic when you think about learning opportunities. So we really need the kids to be in school so they can take advantage of like the cool things that Ting and Pong are building, right? So it's really important that we focus on that engagement in school. At the university level, we see some of the same issues. The national retention rate for first-year students is around 82%. At Washington State in 23-24, our first-year students were only retained at 78%, which is a concern. Look at University of Washington, they're retaining 93% of students. So this engagement of students in their learning environment has really captured my attention. If you just think about what's going on of people missing out on their learning environment, not engaging in that. So I think it's really a critical component to try to understand why that's happening. So what we're trying to do is leverage AI and some of the work we're doing in measurement to see can we improve some of these things at scale. So the first project I've worked on for a bit is measuring motivational and developmental attributes of students at the college level. the work that we started on was really trying to capture skills that students bring to them to the college level, such as self-authorship, coping skills, self-awareness, setting goals, and so forth. It was originally designed to potentially be an assessment that would be for test optional universities who choose not to use the SAT, and see if you could capture these types of skills and how they relate to retention and student success. That measure just briefly gives students a prompt that they write to, or 4 prompts that they write to capturing those skills. As you can imagine, as students write for these for about 10 minutes, you get a lot of text. We train raters to do this. We train human raters to score these, and they do pretty well. Some of my students have scored these, so they know what this looks like, but it's really labor intensive. So you can see where I'm going with this. One of the natural questions is, could we use a large language model to do automatic scoring of these motivational assessments? The easy answer would be yes. We do this in other areas, right? Medical exams use this. They've used this for automated essay scoring. Companies have these products they sell to states for scoring. Those seem to be a bit different than applying it to something like motivation compared to achievement measures. So I've had some work going on where we've compared different language models, seeing which ones seem to work best in trying to score these motivational development assessments. The punchline is they do pretty well, actually. They don't match human scoring perfectly, but when we look at how the scores they produce relate to outcomes, they're pretty good. So we've looked at how those scores, for instance, relate to 4-year retention rates at WSU, and you come up with a value of a relationship of about 0.38. If you're familiar with SAT and GPA correlations, that's about the same. So that's pretty darn good that we can capture this using AI scoring and get close to correlations that we have on standardized measures that measure academic achievement. We also look at these correlations with GPA for students, and those also are around the 0.32, 0.34 range, showing us that yes, we can score these. They do pretty well compared to humans, and they have good relationships with these outcomes that are important for us to understand. And we can do this at scale now. So before we were testing this with 200-300 people, very labor intensive. Training these large language models, we can then take this to scale. So we're pretty excited about that. The second one I'll quickly mention also is with our Warren's product, or the Washington Assessment of Risk and Needs for Students. I'll put a link in the chat if you want to check that out. We have an assessment that looks at when kids are truant or absent from school. It's one assessment that can be given to them to try to see what's going on in their life, to have a conversation with them to try to improve their situation. The Warrens measures things like peer aggression, depression, substance abuse, their family environment, school environment, trying to get a sense of what's going on. Our product's used in about a third of the districts in Washington state, and then in other states like Minnesota, Virginia, Wisconsin, Illinois. We have a high school and a middle school version. They work super well. We've got good evidence around them. And what we hear from our users as a big need is they need something at the elementary level. And when we think about those domains at the elementary level, they're certainly different than what we would measure at the high school level. And we would have to ask different questions, and parents have to be involved compared to kids responding to these items. So one of the things we're interested in doing, and this is being funded by AI, or part of our AI for the Good grant, is thinking about how can we change the assessment development process using AI at scale. So if you're familiar with the design process, and Ting, I really like your code design for human and AI here, because I think you'll see where it parallels what we're trying to do. Usually you get experts in a room, they sit around, they come up with items, they match it with theory, they write items, they go test them out, and it's really those experts that are doing that. What we want to do in developing this elementary version is take a different approach and really develop the assessment from the voices of our community. What does that mean? We actually want to collect audio at scale of teachers, parents, and students at the elementary level talking about successes of going to school, barriers going to school, and so forth, and use that information from the communities we actually work with Warrens to build the elementary version. And it's going to, I think it'll try to control for some of the bias that's talked about in AI, training it differently, and really a true co-design model, I think, of human and theory, as well as actual voices from the community. That presents some challenges. So we're at different stages of doing this. I've got a team at James Madison University, a student working on a master's thesis there, trying to figure out what models seem to work best, and doing some experiments adding noise into some readings we've done, and thinking about accents and how different language accents might influence how those models work. So we're trying to test those models out to see what happens there. And I've got a group here at WSU doing something similar. We have our Eureka Fellow. I'll put in a link to our Eureka program working with me and my students on this. The way we're tackling some of these foundational problems with capturing audio is we have short stories that go along with warns that are vignettes that help the students open up and have conversations with the teachers or counselors. We know the domains that are in these stories because my colleagues wrote the stories to have those domains there. So we're having students read these stories, train LLMs on our stories, and then see if we can actually recapture those domains using general versus specific prompts in noisy environments that would reflect reality when we collect data like this. And we're doing pretty well when we start testing these so far. We're getting error rates that are, about 98% accuracy going from audio to text transcription with whisper models. We're also seeing that we're getting about 80 to 90% accuracy in identifying our domains that should be there. So we're encouraged with these processes we have in place that we're testing that if this does work, we can then do this at scale within a year and collect large amounts of information and use large language models to help us identify the themes from the communities and then the items that would go into those assessments. So that's a brief overview of our AI for the Good project and then another project. Again, both centered on that idea of student engagement and how do we keep students in the learning environment, K through 12 and university, through leveraging some power of AI. I think both of those projects I share just really reflect a broader commitment to doing that and understanding really at a deep level of student engagement, so we can move forward in helping students stay in school. And I'll stop there, Shola, and turn it back over to you guys.
Thank you so very, very much, Brian, and all the panelists. This is really, really exciting what is going on in the college, and thanks to this excellent faculty who have presented today. So please join me in thanking on our panelists with a big round of applause. Thank you so very much. We will now open the floor for our audience to ask questions. Anyone, please? This is the time to pose questions to any of the panelists or all of them together. Yes. Thank you for applauding the panelists. Yeah. Any questions, you can just unmute and ask or put up your hand. With Laura and I are monitoring this. Or I could start. I've prepared for wait time in case people are processing what type of questions to ask. Let me go to the panelists now and say, what research opportunities or avenues do you see opening up now and in the future for the college faculty to pursue research related to AI in education? What kind of research opportunities do you see for other faculty in the college?
I can go ahead and start. I mean, I think one of the things I'm interested in is the kind of pivoting more towards teacher preparation and figuring out how our teacher candidates and our in-service teachers are adapting to using it in the classroom rather than necessarily. And it's one of the things I really like about the AI yin and yang assignment, because for those that did choose to deploy AI, they came up with a lot of ideas that I wouldn't have thought of. And so that's kind of a nice way of kind of crowdsourcing that. And so I think Joan and I enjoyed seeing their responses to see the variety of ways that they found to creatively use AI to support their lessons.
I can underline what Don said. The advisory panel for WSU Tri-Cities College of Ed just convened a couple weeks ago, and their number one one of their number one concerns was AI. And while districts here and there are doing AI training based upon OSPI, and we based our work on OSPI when it came to creating the policy for the teaching and learning department, it's kind of random. And so seeing how districts are dealing with AI and how that trickles down to the school teacher student level, and then how they're the same and different, and how we could maybe help not dictate but guide how we could make more uniform AI policies and usage would be great from a policy side.
Yeah, oh, go ahead, Ting. No, go ahead.
No, it's okay. Yeah, so I can share my idea. I think so based upon my work with interaction with the teachers, I think as teacher educator, we do need to think about how to prepare our future educators to be more AI literated. That's the question. But so from the research perspective, I also have been thinking about so for each different domain, how your field of your research work or how your field of education, for instance, special education, literacy education, language, and how your field of your research work may be could be affected by AI. So what kind of questions that or challenges that in your field that has been kind of historically there? So how those questions in what way could be addressed by AI? So I always start from this kind of the angle to think about the how to position AI in my research work. So leveraging AI's supercomputing ability power, but in also kind of consider is biases, is ethical consideration, these kind of concerns, and then so in what way and how it can play a role in transforming your field of your research work. So that's what I have been thinking. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And Brian?
Well, Pong was unmuted. Do you want to go first, Pong? Go ahead.
Oh,
Okay.
thank you so much, Brian. I just want to follow up with Tim's opinions because I have same feeling. I just want to say about in-service teacher because like Don and Jonah talk about pre-service teacher. Our experience with in-service teacher, no matter you believe or not, teacher already use commercial AI tools a lot. You cannot avoid them to use AI tools. Now, every subject need to think about what can I do as a teacher educator, right? How should I do? How should I work with teacher together so that they can better use AI tools to support their teaching? I believe so our conversation with teacher really think about AI tools can really help them in some ways. But our effort as a teacher educator, so we should work with teacher alongside so that they can better use AI and also awareness about any AI bias and ethical issues that AI may cause to their teaching and learning. So that's one of the agenda. So we are doing in science education. So we are also highly recommend other subject field also consider about that. So yeah, I hand over to Brian.
Thanks, Pong. Yeah, I would just add, I think it cuts, so Shola, your question, I think it cuts across almost any area you can think of through education, from ethics to experiments, right? To how you conduct meta-analyses, to how you run experiments or design them, I mean, I think it cuts across anything. If you step back and look at what's happening in other fields, it's the same thing, right? In February, there's going to be a huge, in Wenatchee, a huge state conference on ag and AI. And it's cutting across everything agriculture does, from identifying weeds and hitting them with heat to how to modulate how they're feeding animals, and thinking of how it's influencing that whole industry. I think education's the same way. You can fit it into almost anything. Is it the right thing to do? I think those are some interesting questions to ask. Where is it the right thing to do? And how do we make sure it's being used appropriately in those situations are things to investigate. but I think it can cut across almost anything we do. Is it
Sure.
perfect? No way. Look at the medical research, right? They use this to look at characteristics to diagnose disease. And one of the examples I was reading about in medicine, it was saying that one of the key indicators was the person was laying down when diagnosed. It just happened that the model was trained on people who actually got tested when they were lying down, and lying down had nothing to do with being sick. And so the models aren't perfect, right? So I think we've talked about, maybe Ting mentioned human in the loop or the co-design process. That has to be there. But for us, I think it cuts across anything we do in education.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. I mean, those are great responses. I wondered, how can we ensure that AI advances equity rather than deepen existing educational divides, especially more and more when we see the direction in which our country is going, erosion of equity, and then we have AI now. How can we maximize the benefits of AI in such a way that AI will help us advance equity rather than deepen divides?
I'll take a pass at that. I'm encouraged when schools implement a school-wide, let's say, Magic School AI or DFID for all of the educators in there. One of the things to be aware of right now is a lot of these companies are not operating at a profit. We are currently enjoying a period of time where they're giving us things for either free or no cost or low cost, and we're getting addicted to it. And it's a really strong possibility that this will end up with, digital haves and have-nots. And those are kind of major concerns. So things like a school-wide implementation at least can help mitigate some of that, but we need to be very aware of those equity issues because, someone with a $200 a month ChatGPT subscription versus someone with just the $20 a month ChatGPT subscription is going to have different levels of productivity. And someone running off of I only have the free version is going to have yet another level of productivity. So those are all things to be aware of.
I think I need to echo Don with that. I mean, the issue is if we can do it at a school, instead of doing this randomness that we do district by district or school by school, or at this point, teacher by teacher, if we have policies that affect an entire district, then we can support an entire district all at once. It's a lot cheaper to cover all the kids in the district than have everyone have the $20, the $200, the $0. When it comes to direct equity, though, I mean, the potential for differentiated instruction is incredibly high. So, an example, in my assessment class, one of my students was not, of course, working on my assessment. She was doing something for another class, Polly Eric Johnson. But what she was doing is I looked over her shoulder, she was asking ChatGPT to define, I think it was photosynthesis. And what she would do is she would then explain it more simply until she got to the level that matched her understanding and then built it back up again. So it's the power that things like ChatGPT have to address the needs of individual students in real time in a way that no teacher has the time to do it. It shouldn't replace the teacher. And there's always a fear that with any tech that we're going to replace the teacher. But if we could have all students have a tutor that could explain it to them at the level that they're at today, and then build up that level as we go on, AI has the tremendous potential to do that.
Thank you, goodness. So I don't know whether I have answer to this question. Yeah, but I do think one thing, so in terms of the way that we are developing the system and also the doing the AI work, we really want to involve all voices from the education system into the conversation to make sure we try our best to address different needs from different perspectives. That's the thing that we can think about. But I do think this is a this should be this should be a system level kind of question from all the education system, whether our infrastructure is ready for this transformation or revolution. So this is something kind of beyond the individual researchers' ability to kind of respond to. But I do think about computer or internet or Google search engine. So when it first come to the classroom, everyone was worried about that, right? But nowadays most of the students can use those kind of the search engine, have those kind of laptop. So I think what I want to say is it's a long way to go, so we have to do a lot of kind of stuff, but it's something that's already there. We have to think about how to better equip our future, our next generation, to really have this ability. And as we do more and explore more, understand more about the process, we may be able to narrow down the gap or emphasize equity. But so we have to do something to start the process.
A quick add-on to everybody now. So think about if this subscription is not a big issue, whether our teacher, our educator, family, like parent and student be prepared with all of these innovative technologies, right? So one of agenda, and also is the federal grant priorities is about AI literacy, AI literacy for workforce and also for teacher student. So we need to prepare our next teacher student when this is the free the technology emerging technology is free to everybody, to public. Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree. I think one of the things that we can't forget about too, I think that the pandemic really highlighted, and we followed up with some work in our mental health aspects or mental health issues, is thinking about different areas, even with our state, with the access or the heterogeneity in terms of access to these things. So it's not just, Jonah's comment about a $200 subscription versus a zero free subscription. It's that some areas of our state, in terms of their school districts, don't have access to, internet, or very limited access to internet in some of the rural communities that are very small. So I think those are also the challenges I want to think about in those communities of how are we trying to address those inequities or those issues where students don't even have the opportunity to learn that in some areas. Like, it's fine if we want to pay for a $200 subscription, but they don't have it in their house where other people have it on the phone, in the house, and everywhere else, right? So I think we want to think about those things as well as we move forward. And I think that's still a concern. There was a review article that hasn't changed in like 5 or 6 years. There was a review article in AI and Ethics Journal in 2020, and they looked at across studies, some of the major concerns people had in terms of use of AI. And number 2 on the list, which is coming up right here, was fairness, non-discrimination, and justice. And so I think those 3 things to me need to be embedded in how we think about where these systems are going and how we're using them in our education system.
Thank you so very, very much. I just want to see if there's anyone with a burning question that I don't want to pass anyone by. I don't want to dominate asking questions. So just one last question before we dismiss today.
Hi, Shola. Hi, everyone. I just
Sarah.
put a long comment in the chat because sometimes I formulate my ideas better in writing first. But I just wanted to thank everyone on the panel for sharing their research today. It was super interesting. And I definitely feel, even though, I hear a lot from Jonah, I feel like a novice in this area. And so I was just really intrigued by everything you were sharing. I love the idea of the human and AI co-design. I really was interested in what you shared, Brian, about using AI as a tool to gather community voices, because I think that's, of course, super important. And then I don't know if we have enough time for this question, but I would just love to, now or later, what you all might suggest for Luddites like me in using and helping to prepare future teachers to use AI in their teaching. like for me, I'm super novice, so just very practical suggestions. Now or next time I see you would be appreciated.
Yeah, I mean, my suggestion would be to try out just like the recommendation of swish and click. Just find a few tools that you want to practice with. Most people are pretty familiar with the most popular LLM out there, ChatGPT, but Perplexity has some really great resources. Notebook LM is probably the one that I think is the most underused right now, where you can just pack in and give it a lot of PDFs and then give it some information about the project you're working on and then query your collection of PDFs. It'll take up to 50 documents at a time. And it'll create a podcast about one of your articles. So that's an interesting way of potentially, enjoying let's say a first draft of a fairly large document. It's like listening to it as a podcast with two narrators telling you about it.
I like how Dan suggests just to give it a try, just to give it a try to start with. And then so as you explore more, then you may kind of you may want to know more. And then so you will kind of start building upon what you already know and then to start to explore more. But think about the research. This is also an area of research, right? So as educator, as teacher educator, how can we prepare ourselves to be more AI literated to support our future language or literacy teachers, right? So this could be something that can be explored or can be a kind of grand proposal. Yeah, just kidding. Yeah, but that's something that's very exciting. Also last week or the week before last week, I was in Seattle. So Microsoft, they have a new program called Elevate Washington. They actually shared very exciting news in the next 3 years. Microsoft will provide a series of systematic AI training for teacher educators for the community college, for university, and for high school, the superintendent school districts. And for each high schooler, they will have their free account, Microsoft account, to try everything out. So I do think there will be more opportunity about the systematic AI training show up very soon. And then so just consider to participate in this, attend those kind of the training.
On that note, I want to say a big thank you so very much. Please join me in thanking the panelists today. Excellent presentations, and for all our attendees, thank you so very much for being here. This has been an exciting session. We hope to be able to have an open session like this, hopefully in the nearest future again, to learn more about the use of AI and researching with AI in the college. Thank you so much again, and have a great rest of your week.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.